In gCADPlus, you would normally work in model space. That's where you create your design. It's full size so that any interrogation of the design gives you numbers that are meaningful to you. For example, if we measured across this double gateway, we get a value of 1492, close to 1.5 meters, which is fine for a double opening gate. I'll zoom back out. What you can see in this instance is the designer has imported a drawing sheet into this model space environment. That's not the way we recommend that you work, although it is possible to print your design from this space. I'll just move our view from a black background to a white background. It just makes it a little easier to see. So what we have here is a title block that's been inserted into model space, and if you have a look over here, it says A3 title block. That's despite, and it's unselected, that's despite the word A2 written down here. But when I select that block, it is referred to as an A3 title block. So either, and you can see it's been brought in at a scale of 1. So that block's been drawn very, very large indeed, and it gets a really complicated business to try and work out scaling in an instance such as this. If I go to sheet 1, which is the layout view, here let's zoom extents here, and let's take off the grid. So what we've got here is a floating viewport, and there it is, which surrounds the sheet. So we'll display that on the layout. So if we just select the floating viewport, you can see the view scale is 150. So I think the intention here is to scale this design 150 and then plot it on the sheet. But I'm not sure whether the intention was to plot from this space, this layout space, or indeed plot from model space. So this to me is quite confusing, and I think you can simplify things a lot. So we would argue that you can dispense with bringing into model space any sort of sheet information and just bring in the sheet information into a layout space, and that enables you to scale things a lot earlier, a lot easier, and indeed earlier than we've done here. So what I'm going to do in a moment is stop the recording, and I'm going to bring in, because this is marked as an A2 sheet, even though we now know it's not an A2 sheet, what I'm going to do now is to create a new layout, bring in an A2 sheet that's been drawn proper size, and we'll create a floating viewport in it and see what we can do with working to a fixed scale in that sheet. Well, what I've done now is I've gone back to model space and I've removed that sheet. I could, I guess, now turn my background color back to black, and that clearly distinguishes the two spaces. And then I've created a new layout, and I'll go into the layouts manager and just show that I've called it layout 1. It's an A2 sheet in portrait mode. There's no objects on it at the moment. So what we're now going to do is to insert an A2 size portrait sheet complete with our title block. So for that I'm going to go to the blocks folder here, and I've got one called A2 vertical. There's the little snapshot. It's been drawn with the red margin corresponds to the cut edge of an A2 sheet, but the black or white lines that you see here correspond to a reference grid, and there's a title block in the corner. So I'm going to insert it into the drawing. It'll come in at a scale of 1. So I think you can see now the cut edge, so all I really need to do is position this so it sits nicely on the paper and the block goes in. Now if we edit that block just for the moment and pick that red line, you'll see that it's on layer 0. We could, once the block is in, we could change that colour later on. We could in fact change it right now to colour 255 white, so it won't in fact plot. So we'll close the block editor and come back to the layout sheet. I'll unselect all. So there's our reference block with its correct lettering running from A through to M there, and our numbering system starting at the top left and running down to number 18. So you could use this to discuss any part of a complex design. You could use the grid system. So now what we're going to do is to set up a floating viewport in there, and I hope to show you that we can control scale quickly and easily in this space. So let's do that. We're in layout 1, so we're going to add a viewport, and I'll pop it arbitrarily inside our frame, and then we can double click in here, and what we're after is to bring down our, we'll probably take a couple of attempts at this. Now you can see our floating viewport, which has still got a black outline. We'll deal with that in a moment, but we can double click in here because we want to make sure that our floating viewport is positioned correctly, and we can display it on the sheet. So things are looking good on that sheet. We can select the floating viewport, and we can see that the view scale here is 111. So an approved scale for, I'm working in the metric system in Australia here, we're allowed to use a scale of 100. 200 will not work for us, but we're going to fix that scale, and there we are. There's a scale that works beautifully at a scale of 1 to 100, sitting inside the A2 sheet. So now we could get in here and edit the design. It's currently saying scale 1x. We need to make sure that this floating viewport, which let's select it again, which is now fixed scale 1 to 100, we need to make sure that its color is, and indeed its layer, I won't play with the layer at the moment, and now that floating viewport's gone and we're ready to plot, and we can plot this at 1 to 100 and be confident that our new statement in our title block of 1 to 100 is in fact accurate. So I hope that illustrates that if you draw a full size in model space and then have a full size sheet with your title blocks in it, you can just pop it into layout, and it enables you to control scale a whole lot easier than trying to draw title blocks at different sizes and bring them in and scale them up and down in model space.